Greetings, friends. It's Chapo coming at you Monday, August 16th. In just a little bit, I will be talking to Terence and Tom from the Trillbillies about the devastating floods that they are living through in eastern Kentucky right now. It's a very good conversation with our friends, the Trillbillies. But before that, it's Chapo. It's Matt and Felix. We're chilling here in L.A. You know what we got to talk about. Trump, nuclear codes. Folks... I mean, like, okay, so the last episode we talked about, feds did a sweep on Mar-a-Lago. And since then, it's come out that, the warrant was issued in conjunction with a number of statutes, one of them being the Espionage Act.
Okay, so, most of the stuff in the raid, who gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
The raid in and of itself and most of the documents themselves, it's this is another case of someone being like, you did documents wrong.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that one of the documents is basically one of those 10-mile long CVS receipts that may prove that in 2019, Trump and elements of his NSC gave Saudis nuclear technology secrets, which it turns out they did. It turns out Congress has seen documents basically confirming this fact. I know this is on the verge of sounding very Liv Parnas, but the reason that I know it's true is that Trump and his legal team, his lawyer who he shared with King Vaughn, Drew Foundling, they moved to seal the warrant. And then when the Justice Department's okay, the warrant's unsealed, this is pursuant to the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
He's no, you have to reseal it now. Which kind of tells me that's because it's what would be so shameful that even he would be actually no.
Yeah. And of course that's not how the story is being told right now. As far as I can tell, it's basically he, instead of going back to Washington for the inauguration and the handoff of the nuclear football like his tradition, he just was staying sulking in Florida for the inauguration, and since nobody really wanted to bother him and they were all just kind of glad that he was leaving, they just said, you know what, let him keep it. Fuck it. We'll just get a new football made, and we'll have new codes.
Switch out the code.
We'll go to Verizon and we'll get a new football.
It's basically and then he kept it. And so, I mean, but if that's what happened, and that's kind of the story as it's being told, that's like when you check out of a hotel and you forgot to give them your key card and you leave it in your pocket. It's you're not going to be able to break and enter in there anymore. They change the card as soon as your stay ends. So once again, you have real horrifying criminality and an inability to actually talk about it because nobody, I guess, wants to.
Yeah,
because it's too just terrifying. I don't know.
Because in reading the accounts of this, it is very hard to discern. I mean, again, because the warrants, what's sealed and what isn't, it's very hard to discern what actually these documents are, why the raid take place, and if you're a defender of Trump, you were originally saying the FBI planted the documents, and then within hours later, they were just oh no, the documents are real, but Trump declassified them, and he declassified them by thinking
he thought it's declassified.
He thought as I was taking them out or not returning them, he just thought in his own head these are declassified.
Well, it's like Space Invaders. They're planting documents, and he's trying as fast as he can to declassify them.
But yeah, I guess the fact that I wasn't even, I guess I was maybe dimly aware of this fact. But yeah, I feel as you pointed out in 2019, Trump's National Security Council, whistleblowers at the time said that they illegally gave nuclear technology to the Saudis because they fucking bribed them. I mean, just try to think about that.
How the fuck did he get indicted or fucking impeached off some fucking Lev Parnas Ukraine bullshit?
This is the worst thing he could have done. This is the one thing where I will go, okay, he's a unique malevolent force, not just in character and culture and all that, but in policy. He departs significantly from Bush or a hypothetical Rubio administration because he's the only guy I could think of who would do this.
Right.
Outside of a Saudi Manchurian candidate.
And
this is the most reckless thing he could have done.
And not because of any ideological commitments, not because of any theory of politics. Purely, he's running 5 million scams at a time, and he needs to have fresh infusions of cash at every point to keep the fucking thing going. And this is just another fucking short-term grift to keep the lights on in the White House.
If like just one of these things was true about Saudi Arabia, this would be grounds to execute him, right? If it was just not a country, no institutions, oops, all cousins,
right?
If it was just a fucking pile of sand with some oil and some cousins, that's grounds for execution. If it was that they'd have no formal military and the closest thing they have is religious extremists from their own countries and global hotspots that they send into Syria to do genocidal acts, that's grounds for imprisonment, execution. If it was any of the if it was any of these singular things, but it's all of them.
Yeah.
It's all of them. It is, you're giving nuclear secrets to, yes, a bunch of cousins who fund like freelance what's the Nazi Dirty Dozen?
What?
Otto
Skorzeny.
No,
Skorzeny.
that's Special Forces.
Oh, I don't know.
You know the guy who's a pedophile and like
Oscar Dirlwangler, the Dirlwangler Brigade.
Yeah, like you're giving nukes to
the Dirlwangler Brigade,
like 500 freelance Dirlwangers in Syria.
Yeah. And here's the thing about this, though. So the one thing we know about Trump is that he is basically allowed to do whatever he wants because it's in the general interest to let him do so. And that means that he was allowed to do this because there is no way that the highest levels of U.S. intelligence were not aware he was doing this. He was not able to ever disguise anything. He would take NSC meetings in front of the fucking leather dinosaur Gulf pros at Mar-a-Lago, for Christ's sake. Like, he had no OPSEC. The other countries knew what was going on. We sure as shit knew. And yet it was allowed to happen. A guy that they could have touched at any time, at any moment. And that means one of two things. It means somebody wants loose nukes in the hands potentially of the Saudi psycho hillbilly cousin network, and sees that as in like long term the best interest of like their vision of like American interest, which is a terrifying thought, or the neoliberalization of institutions in America has also infected intelligence and like the deep state to such a degree that they're incapable of stopping something like this from happening.
I think it's both, right? I think that there are elements of the deep state who are
right. There are elements, and they cannot be checked.
Right.
There's no overseeing force that could stop like a rogue, could like discipline like a Ted Shackley or something.
Right. I think that there are like elements in there who are like, well, like if people found out about like if like Los Angeles like got hit with a dirty bomb, like people would be mad at us. But like really what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
And like it's like, again, it's like defund the police. I mean, what does that mean for me ultimately?
Yeah.
A bigger budget. And then there are other elements who like might want to stop this, but like trying to do 1963, trying to do the equivalent of killing JFK or RFK or any of that, it is like it's like trying to get your insurance to cover Adderall at this point. Like making your way through the deep state phone bank to like kill a president.
Impossible now.
It's like, yeah, it's your HMO.
Yeah,
it's a
everybody's
nightmare.
got a tummy ache. They can't handle it.
A technician will come by your house anytime between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m.
You know,
like
I would really love to inject the president with a pellet of ricin, but I just don't have the spoons.
It's literally all contractors. I mean, if they wanted to kill him for this, if they wanted to prevent this, they would have had to like have a mixer in 2019 between like former CIA Special Activities divisions who are technically classified the same as Uber drivers and like people formerly in DIA.
I mean, like, when this news is burbling up about, Trump has, like the way it was sort of like metabolized into like, the popular discourse was that Trump just has like nuclear launch codes or the nuclear football in a closet in Mar-a-Lago. And we had a fun time just imagining what, like, probably defunct codes, but like the obvious thing that would come to mind is Trump just showing it off to dentists and cosmetic surgeons and just be like, look at it. the football. We're gonna go toss around the pigskin. Many of the generals didn't want me to have the football, but I'm a quarterback. I'm the commander in chief. Give me the football. Or just like you said, like making it like the highest tier of Mar-a-Lago membership.
Yeah.
You
You
can
can
get
extra
your-
10 grand a year.
Yeah, you can get your picture taken. Like,
Oh, do you think he like did a skit where like, because all his cultural references are from 47 years ago, he made like someone's big son redo the Samsonite commercial where the gorilla tries to open the suitcase but with a nuclear football. Someone's just like big slow son.
Oh my god.
but I guess like when like this is the perfect Trump scandal and Trump story because the spine-chillingly horrifying and criminal and like world-scale level genocidal evil that like people are imagining has already happened and happened legally and in more or less in plain sight.
Yeah.
No one did
like,
anything.
Like I'm just reading here, like this is from NBC News. This is Ken Delaney and from 2019. Whistleblowers from within President Donald Trump's National Security Council have told a congressional committee that efforts by former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to transfer sensitive nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia may have violated the law, and investigators fear Trump is still considering it, according to a new report obtained by NBC News. The House Oversight Committee has formally opened an investigation into the matter, releasing an interim staff report that adds new details to previous public accounts of how Flynn sought to push through the nuclear proposal on behalf of a group he had once advised. Tom, yeah,
I didn't know this. This is Michael Flynn who
Yeah.
did this?
Yeah.
Mr. fucking America fucking first?
Yeah.
Michael Flynn, like, okay, if you remember in 2015, he was writing articles that were like, let's shoot Erdogan with the AIDS gun. And then they were like, do you want a Maserati?
Yeah.
And he's like,
I will personally capture and compromise to a permanent end Fethullah Gulen.
yeah, like it's literally give him $700,000 and you'll get him supporting a caliphate by the end of the day.
Yeah, it just shows like how like this whole mirage of a social movement, this based right populism, this fantasy that it could be grounded in any meaningful politics when it's made up entirely at the highest levels of complete fucking frauds. Like there's no way to discipline them because they are fucking in charge of this thing. It's just all this anger, justified in most cases, expressing itself in the most incoherent way, and then exploited by complete fucking soulless frauds who will literally give people who want to destroy the United States nuclear weaponry.
I think like, okay, I can game out what their argument in favor would be, right? It's like, oh, look how much Mohammed bin Salman has secularized the kingdom. He's based. He's fighting like corruption within the kingdom.
What, he's going to nuke Mecca himself?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Epic face turn
Right,
for these guys?
It's so stupid. It's so stupid for like a billion reasons, but it's like, okay, so he still hasn't created institutions.
Exactly.
And it's still like
who gives a shit what
network-
he wants? He's barely holding on by his fingernails.
Yeah, it's a network of fucking relatives who hate each other. You're telling me he's
factions
yeah.
upon factions upon factions. No institutional checks toward private activity. Like when we say the Saudis did 9/11, you can't really say what you mean by the Saudis. The highest levels of state, yes, but they're so compartmentalized and unchecked by one another, it still doesn't really necessarily add up to like a state project, which means anything is possible,
And-
because everything is utterly at the end deniable.
And even if you believe that, 9/11 was pulled off by elements within the Saudi and American governments. It was
Yeah.
a collaboration on some level. If you believe
Epic
that.
collab.
And
Mossad's in there too. Give them their bit.
in service of
They're like the Rick Ross in
maintaining
the studio.
maintaining unchecked American military empire in the 21st century. If you are committed to that project, or even any kind of like American nationalism, no matter how evil it is or how it represents itself, this is the one thing literally you can't do.
Yeah.
And in the NBC article, it doesn't like stay straight out like whether it actually happened. They were like he was planning to do it, and like they might have done it, or like it's all very vague. But just the fact that anyone at any level in the Trump administration was considering giving the Saudis any kind of nuclear technology or declassified anything is grounds for execution. In my
Okay,
opinion.
you say so. It isn't clear from what we have now whether it actually happened or whether this was efforts to.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's very possible that they watched this whole thing happen, waiting to intervene, and of course Trump fucked it up somehow and it didn't happen, and then essentially kept it in their pocket if they needed to, like, actually go against Trump, which it does look like they're doing right now,
Yeah,
to a degree that they weren't before. I think they see him as a unique threat to the institutions that they need to keep the fucking lights on in this country, and see it in their interest to put more pressure on him than they have until this point.
Yeah, if I had to bet money on this, I would go Michael Flynn, looking at the outstanding job that he did trying to capture Gulen, looking at the attention to detail and operational intelligence of everything.
His Machiavellian, masterful month-long stay as national security advisor.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to bet money, I would say that like they fucked it up. I would say that Trump sent them like something that's like a Schoolhouse Rock for how to enrich an atom. Like,
I'm just an atom waiting to get split.
Yeah, I would say it probably they probably screwed it up. But even if right, I agree with you that this is the deep state going, okay, here's the hugely dangerous thing he did. And I think Trump has confirmed that's the case by them trying to reseal all this.
That is
by them
wild.
trying to sweep
they
all
would
this.
Want to do that.
They're trying to sweep it back under the rug after raising a stink about it. It's like they forgot what they did.
Right.
You know?
Because like if it's all the same stuff that has been going on, it's the same bullshit like weak tea and abstract shit that Democrats have been throwing at him for the last 6 years, then there's no reason to keep anything secret.
Right.
Because if that's not the case, then maybe you stop it.
And but even if this is like the deep state, like pulling this back out 3 years later, it's like, well, like they're right. Like this is like the worst thing he could do. This is like genocide. Like, okay, you thought like putting Alawite women in cages was bad. You thought mass graves of Shia in Syria is bad. Absolutely. Imagine that with a fucking dirty bomb.
Yeah.
Imagine that, like, not even leaving. If it
Not
doesn't
even a dirty
leave
bomb,
Syria,
like a working nuclear weapon.
yeah, and like it is a humanitarian catastrophe, unlike anything that we've seen as of recent.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at like current politics, is this rubric of like elite domination, like some great reset fucking fantasy of like them reshuffling of the social reality in favor of like a totally enforced, centralized federal authority distributing resources in cubes and bugs and all that bullshit. How would they not be incredibly benefited by a nuke going off in an American city or a dirty bomb? How would that not absolutely help every bad actor that you're supposed to be worried about as a based fucking populist?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, another thing I want to discuss is like, whether they attempted to do it or there was ever any actual like legally approved or otherwise transfer of American nuclear technology to elements within the Saudi government. Whether it happened or not, like I think we should take into consideration the like post-president, like post-White House condition of Trump and his family. And I'm speaking about the $2 billion that Jared just got from the Saudis. This big fund of money that he now has access to, and the Saudi Live golf tour that Trump is involved. Like how are we not to like interpret this as just a massive form of like legalized, like of just pay, like openly paying the bribes that have been promised him for shit?
Yeah.
Like
I honestly kind of wonder if Trump even knew about this, if this happened, that he was even aware of it, because it seems like you think that Jared would have been actually quarterbacking.
It does seem like something that Trump would blurt out too.
We're going to be helping our friends in Saudi. They're going to be very happy very soon.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that right now.
We're giving him the bomb.
They're going to have the bomb. Our good friends, they're going to bomb them.
This sounds like something he would like tell the Eagle Scouts.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's as we said, like a symptom of like a unique type of like incompetence and graft. But part of that incompetence and graft is that all these things are happening while he's like producing more hamburger parties.
Yeah,
Like he's
it's
not
true.
aware. It's Jared and all these other people trying to like shore up holes in their shitty real estate deals with shit like
exactly.
this.
And I my guess is that what's going to end up happening is this is going to sort of subside, and I don't think it's going to lead to prosecution or anything. It's going to be a slow rolling thing, like a sort of an investigatory milieu that they're going to keep going over the next 2 years and hope to sort of sink Trump over time, like the fucking trying to stab a woolly mammoth, just bring him down with like death by 1,000 cuts, because I don't think they want anything to go to any real legal proceedings, because prosecuting a president is a right.
That opens a
red
door
line
that's never going to get
And you
closed.
get all of them.
Yeah.
It undermines things that just are load-bearing structures. So, and I don't think they need to do that. I don't think there's any imperative. Nobody's going to make them do it if they don't want to. I think they're just going to keep this like juiced environment going so that all the libs can like invest in it and feel like, oh, this is all leading to him. Sure, they can fantasize, go to jail, but what they're really fantasizing about is he's going to not be president again. We're going to beat him at the polls, and that'll get him through to the next election, and hopefully, it'll work, and he will lose either to DeSantis in the primary or to Biden or hopefully somebody else in the general. According to them, I don't know.
I don't see. If that's their plan, I give it like a 50-50 shot of working, probably less than that.
No, it's a very bad plan, but again, it feels like the best they can actually pull off.
Yeah.
Anything more than that requires degrees of coordination and capacity that these organizations have been drained of over the last 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, so DeSantis would have to go to them and be like, I promise to be 30% more normal.
Yeah. You got to
Like,
normal it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, they're already reaching out to DeSantis today. Fucking David Frum, arch neocon, arch neocon says, "Hey, DeSantis huge bump up from Trump. He will go away if he loses." Which, wow, hell of a fucking standard there, David. But he's reaching out the glad hand from the fucking establishment to this guy.
Yeah.
If he will take 2-3 steps in their direction, which of course he will, because he's a fucking demon who wants to be president more than anything else.
Yeah. That was hugely symbolic. That was Regina George inviting him to sit with them.
Indeed, yeah.
Can we talk briefly about the fact that Trump has the same lawyer as Gucci Mane?
That's very funny.
And
Well,
King
okay,
Von?
I want to correct myself. It turns out that's just his lawyer in the Georgia vote tampering case, which is like,
oh
But
god,
that's still his lawyer.
that is his lawyer. It is his lawyer. I was excited at the idea that Drew Findling was his lawyer for the nuke stuff.
That would be funny.
No,
Who the hell is his lawyer
I mean,
for
if you
that?
can get, if you can get a
Good.
rapper off a gun charge, you can get a president off a nuke charge.
Drew Findling's a pretty good lawyer. He's
Yeah.
a pretty fucking good lawyer. He's gotten some of my favorite guys off. He's responsible for some of my favorite pictures in rap because he is a 5'6" Jewish man. He's pretty swagged out. He's pretty fucking swagged out. And now, most importantly, this means there's 1 degree of separation between Trump and King Von.
He feels like he's basically he's Sean Penn in Carlito's Way. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, yes.
He's like a
Yes.
fixer type criminal lawyer.
Yeah.
But he also he's weird because has a little bit of that fixer thing. Like he is notorious for like a guy will be on video emptying a clip into another car.
Yeah.
And he'll get him out on bond.
Wow.
Like he's pretty fucking good, but he also seems to be amazing in the courtroom. I mean, as far as guys that Trump could pick to hire, say he'll pay $972,000 to and then never pay, pretty good choice.
Yeah.
I mean, another factor that is worth considering when it regards, like, you know, any possible prosecution of Trump is the wave of retaliations against the FBI that we're already seeing right
boy.
now. That has been, I mean, honestly, the best case scenario for anything that could happen in this country. Like, because it's just, Ken Watanabe.
Let them fight.
It's the early colonels getting popped off in the bag.
And we talked about this on Hassan's show yesterday, but I got to shout it again on our show. I gotta credit John Dolan, the war nerd, because he did a Facebook post about that guy that tried to shoot up the Cincinnati FBI office.
God, what a legend.
And he said the first sentence of this guy's Facebook post about it will live in the annals of like a 25th century American poetry anthology. Just the first sentence of his Facebook post. I thought I had a way to get through the bulletproof glass. Turns out I didn't.
It really is like moths flying directly into the heat lamp.
Yep. They can't take it anymore. It's like, I'm going out. All I got to do is get myself there, and then it'll take care of itself.
And by the way, the guy's strategy for getting through the bulletproof glass involved a nail gun.
A nail gun, a thing that fires a shittier bullet,
A much
at
less
lower
powerful
velocity.
gun.
But basically, though, so he fails to get into the FBI building, and then he escapes, and he runs into a cornfield, and he's holding off the cops at gunpoint, like he's shooting from the corn while they're like at a perimeter, and then he fucking posted. That quote was after he was in the fucking field.
That's the most poetic thing I've ever heard.
course.
The cornfield. He ran into like
He ran to like the heart to like embrace All of it. The entire archetype that he was trying to defend.
He went into like the base elemental form of soda.
Yep.
Like he's
Oh my God, you're right. He tried to fuse with treat.
Yeah.
He tried to have like a heroic death that would send him to the Valhalla of infinite corn.
yes. He's Walter White at the end of Breaking Bad.
Yes. So once again, we have a genius. This guy is in Elysium.
Yes.
At the end of Gladiator, when he's dying and he's putting his hands out to touch the fucking the wheat. He's doing that with the fucking high as an elephant's eye corn.
Oh my God.
There's rivers of Dr. Pepper.
It's perfect because he did it. He's like, this is blood of patriots, refreshing the tree of liberty for Michael Flynn could make $700,000 giving Saudi Arabians nuclear secrets. Doesn't kill a single FBI agent. Just fails.
Awful K-to-D ratio.
Yeah, doing something he saw in a Gerard Butler movie that Mind of Jason saw, and then dies trying to merge with soda while posting. He's Jesus Christ. He's like the new Jesus Christ.
If you want to know what Jesus would do if he came back now, that's what happens to him. He goes down in a cornfield of Golgotha.
Yeah, it's like, look, I mean,
I came not to bring peace, but a nail gun.
The remaining Confederate statues should be replaced by him.
Get him in there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's two other examples. There was a guy who pulled up to the Capitol.
By the way, his name was Ricky Shitley or something?
Yes. He has a fucking disgusting German name. What's that thing from the Cultural Revolution? Like the diary of the Chinese soldier who got run over by a truck. And
right.
They, found his diaries. Yeah. That's him. That's for the American Cultural Revolution.
That's true.
There was a guy that just pulled up to the Capitol 4 a.m, just fired off with a couple shots into the air, and then blew his head off, and then just shot himself. And there was another guy I just saw this morning who was just he got a little too wild on Gab.
Oh, this is so funny.
He got a little too wild on Gab, and he was like, I will, any FBI agent from the janitor to the director, Christopher Wray, should be murdered.
Yep.
They are enemies of the state, and I will pledge my life to just taking out as many of them as possible. And he said, I will not spend a single second in custody.
Yes.
I will sacrifice my life. There's no way they're taking me alive.
Yes.
He is currently in federal custody.
Yeah. Dude, you had your chance. They came for you. What'd you do?
Did he even point a gun at them?
No, he went down peaceful.
No, but Matt, you had this vision of let's say Trump is indicted for treason or high crime, anything,
whatever. Even if they go with the lowest,
it's just any regional, any regional FBI office will immediately will be laid siege.
Yeah.
By just feral MAGAs who will be folks. They're bringing out the trebuchets.
Oh yeah, you got to know it.
They're bringing out the arquebuses.
Yep.
They're bringing out the catapults. They're going to be. We said
the scorpions.
There's going to be someone who's close to death, and you said they will choose to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And then be catapulted into the FBI office.
Yeah,
and their body will just smash against the wall.
Yeah,
spread the protein.
The spike proteins.
They'll shed the spike proteins to everyone inside the FBI office.
That was my idea for them doing Mongolian biological warfare.
Yeah, no, and then also any shit they could get at Home Depot, a sodium bomb in one of those big green egg barbecues, just rolling into the fucking lobby of
those are expensive.
Of the federal court. Yeah, no, of course, but anything, anything for the cause.
Oh, think about they're getting mowed down, going over the top into no man's land, and instead of an adrenaline shot, it's a zinc and vitamin C super boost.
No, but I mean, it's gonna be upsetting watching these guys just pop off. But it's not gonna, I don't think, add up to anything.
No, I mean, what would happen? Is the FBI gonna be we were wrong?
Yeah.
Another really funny element to this that I've seen repeated a lot that is that has become a real focus for this violent revolutionary anger at the FBI. Is I've seen a lot of people sharing and obsessed with the idea that the FBI agents went through Melania Trump's underwear drawer and sniffed her panties.
Yeah, these disgusting pigs. These people are sick. First they defend and protect Epstein, and now they do this. Awful.
That's funny because it's that's the first thing I imagine Trump doing if he was an FBI agent.
John Malkovich and being John Malkovich. Just take a little cheeky little sniff.
That always confused me so much when I was like a little kid. Like stuff where like a guy sniffs a girl's panties.
Yeah, it's a very weird one. I've never gotten that one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, when the FBI has a search warrant for your house, I mean, they don't say panty drawer off limits.
It's true.
Yeah.
And he said, like, they opened my personal safe. They opened my personal
That's really funny.
They opened my personal safe. That's where I keep things I don't want people to see.
Yeah. That is very good. Like
They confiscated all my crime folders. What crimes I do?
Well, the idea that like the FBI is searching your house and you're like, okay, off limits, and they're like, yeah, you're right. You're like, okay.
What do you guys think is in Donald Trump's personal safe? Like, what is his rosebud that he keeps in there?
Oh, man.
I think he's definitely. I totally believe now that he has a nuclear football, and that if you like win the auction to sit at his table at the wet meat buffet, at the end of it, he shows you the football, and you get to like hold it and get a picture taken with it.
Okay, I think stuff that's in Trump's personal safe. I think like a postcard that Tom Landry wrote like with his own handwriting, like his like actual signed by him. A picture where like his hand is on Candace Bergen's thigh, from 1984.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think like maybe like fraudulent Nazi memorabilia.
Oh yeah, like some stuff he got scammed off of eBay with.
Yeah, something really fucking dumb. Like, oh, these were Hitler's cufflinks. He like wore these when he killed himself. Isn't that cool? Just stupid shit. Like stupid shit like that. Like something that where it's like something that couldn't exist. Where it's like, this was Patton's TV remote. It's like a universal remote.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
A photo of Douglas MacArthur signed by Harry Hamlin. Oh man. Well, yeah, I can't wait to see what happens with this. It just seems like
I gotta say they're this new season they're raising the stakes. They're hooking us in again. I got to give them credit. The programmers, the showrunners, the archons, they're working overtime, and we salute them on it.
I mean, actually, just like before we get into Trillbillies, one last thing in terms of the archons scripting this new season of reality that I got to talk about. Prayers up from our boy Salman Rushdie.
Yeah, Jesus Christ!
Holy shit! Like, okay,
I thought everybody had chilled out on that. That is wild.
The fact that like, okay, it looks like he's going to pull through, but I mean, he was
Jesus,
gravely injured, and like, the fact that he lived through it, I'm like, okay, that's G shit.
Yeah.
Like he lived that long, 30 years after that shit. Some fucking moron just pokes his liver up at the Chautauqua Writers Conference.
I mean, it's
in
like
Western New York. He'd been living more or less openly in New York for like decades.
And
now.
like the fatwa had even kind of been rescinded.
Okay, this is funny though. The fatwa had been rescinded, but the bounty was still in effect.
And it's like, what's he thinking? Does he think they're going to put it on his commissary?
Yeah, no,
prison?
the guy who stabbed him. We were questioning like, is he going to get the money?
Yeah. Yeah. Does it go on his books?
Yeah. So you're thinking like he's in jail, but he has the most ramen noodles out of anyone in like the New York State prison system.
He has to start like that guy has to start a new thing in prison.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, you're a Southeast Asian Shia Muslim.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got to start a new thing.
You got to start a new thing, and all those ramen noodle packets will help.
Yes,
they're going to lubricate the transmission. He's going to be like Mansa Musa, that like fucking like African king who like would cause hyperinflation on his trip to Mecca because he spent so much gold on everything. Like that would be him in prison.
Here's what I don't like about this guy. Like him stabbing Rushdie.
He stabbed Salman Rushdie.
That's his business. That's his business. But no. I mean, it is that like this guy's like 34.
Yeah. How
like,
do you care about this?
Yeah, he's like those people who like post under Led Zeppelin things on YouTube where they're like, I'm 12. I was
that's
born
the
in the
thing
wrong
is,
generation.
what we're seeing, this really is meaningful. You're showing like this is the cultural dead end we're all in. We got to like, I'm a relatively young guy who's frustrated and wants to like have a religious object. I want my own corn, transcendental moment. How do I do it with my cultural context where I don't have corn as my God? What do I have? Just this old fucking deal, this old culture war thing that's like been 30 years old because they're not generating anything new to believe in anywhere.
Yeah. It's like, they don't even, in Iran, they don't, I think like the context for that historically is interesting because it's like, no, like the Ayatollah wasn't like, oh, I like hate Rushdie so much. It was like a flex. It was like, we're the real defenders of Islam.
Right.
Like Saudi Arabia could say they have Mecca and Medina,
exactly.
but like they can't openly call for the death of a
They
Westerner.
can't kill for like a British citizen or like a
Yeah, they're showing
international, like,
like their
novelist.
state capacity and their ability to like project power
Right,
globally. Yeah.
We're outside of the fold.
Exactly.
We can secretly kill Westerners. We are openly
well,
doing
I
it.
mean, like, look, Saudi Arabia, they can wipe out all of Cantor Fitzgerald in one day. But if even one of those guys had fucked Padma Lashma, then like it would have been a problem. And you know what? Like, I gotta say, is Salman Rushdie. I'm like, look, I saw, like, not overwhelming, but like similar to the Charlie Hebdo thing. There are a few dumb babies who are like actually Salman Rushdie deserved to die for writing a novel that I haven't read.
Psychotic. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
See, like, you were really offended by his portrayal of Muhammad in the Satanic Verses. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, outside any freedom of speech issue, I simply must ride with Salman Rushdie because he is one of the all-time greatest pussy getters of all time. There is few men who have batted out of have fought out of their weight class at a higher level than Salman Rushdie did.
Insane.
So, I mean, respect.
It's like his adjusted stats are legendary because he's up there with your Warren Beatty's and stuff. It's like, well, yeah, but
Warren Beatty looks like Warren
exactly
Beatty.
when you consider the handicap here, these are similar numbers. It's amazing.
He put up Wilt Chamberlain numbers, and he's like 5'5". He's always looked the same. He's one of those guys that like
he looks like Middle Eastern Frasier.
yes. He is always, from the time I was like an infant, he's looked 57 years old.
Yes,
and he's still like he's never fucked a woman shorter than 5'9".
Yep.
Like he's God, yeah.
And,
what can you even say?
My other favorite detail about Salman Rushdie is like when the height of the fatwa, when like his life was like truly in danger, he was living with round the clock CIA protection, like CIA bodyguards. They were living in his flat in London and like going everywhere with him, round the clock CIA agent security detail, guys who were like basically would give their lives to save his. At the end of every month, he submitted an invoice to the CIA that charged them for down to the individual sheet of toilet paper consumed in his apartment, the electricity bill, the water bill, cereal, everything. He fucking squeezed every penny out of Langley for having guys live in his fucking house.
He's awesome.
He kicks ass.
We were talking about this yesterday, but don't you think it's interesting how the point of the fatwa is like it was like a sweepstakes. It's like go out and do your best. But that
go for it.
Yeah, no one
believe in yourself.
Don't you think it's interesting that no one tried a honeypot? Because it's always been known
That's
he gets
true.
kind of pussy.
Yeah, like a little disciplined move could get there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess they anyone who would kill him for that is so disgusted by that idea.
Yeah,
maybe
they're not sophisticated enough for that sort of high end espionage act.
Yeah, and a Soleimani type would be able to put that together, but I don't think guys that competent gave a shit.
Exactly. Yeah, like that. It's mutually exclusive.
Right.
Like if you care about this stuff, it's because you're kind of a loser.
Exactly. Soleimani is well, I mean, he was a little young at the time, but his equivalent in IRGC and Quds, they were we're trying to kill Israelis.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you no.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at this and see okay, so we had this attack on Rushdie, but there have been zero, at least to my knowledge, public terror attacks in the West, ascribed to anyone or independently, in response to the Soleimani assassination. There was no real blowback to that. There were some missile attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq, but there was no real terror related to it. Even individual guys taking it upon themselves. And it's kind of well, here's a thing where, maybe if you're pissed about Soleimani, you have something better to do with your time than impotently strike out at the West. You have an actual project, a state project that you can participate in. And so you don't need to do the loser thing of just trying to kill somebody.
Yeah, I wonder, with the Soleimani thing, I think about that a lot because it's I didn't expect it to happen right after.
Yeah.
That's not really their style. I am kind of curious as to what it will be, if anything.
Yeah.
It's got to be something.
I mean,
Apparently they were put a bounty on Bolton.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an 83-year-old man. Like, better hurry up.
Sorry, just a bit of personal connection here with Rushdie. My mom emailed me this morning because she just forwards me Google alerts for like everything she gets on like me or our family, and it was a Google alert for Daniel Menaker, and she says, "I don't see any mention of dad in this. Do either of you?" And it's just like an AP News story about Salman Rushdie being attacked. And I don't see my dad's name, but he did edit one of Salman's later novels called Shalimar the Clown, which, as far as I know, does not have any blasphemous depictions of Muhammad or does not defame the Islamic faith in any way, shape, or form. I just want to be very clear about that. But she says, "Did you know we went to Rushdie's wedding to Padma Lakshmi? It was quite the event. They got divorced pretty soon after."
Nothing,
So I actually did not know that. I know my dad edited one of his books, but
nothing gold can stay.
Yeah, what can you do?
just respect to Salman.
Absolutely.
I'm glad
Yes.
he
Get
pulled
well.
through.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope he stays crushing pussy with one. He's with one eye, but
Yeah.
that's cool. Like, kind of an eye patch. That's
Yeah, that's baller.
If anything, I think he gets more now.
Yeah.
But I mean, like that's insane to me. But like 30 years,
Yeah.
and then you just get poked up,
Yeah.
just randomly.
Wild.
Like, that's fucking wild. I'm glad you didn't die though, because I would have been really fucked up.
Yeah.
That would have been sad.
That would have
man.
been really sad. Anyway, let's move on to the second half of the show. Here are Terence and Tom from the Trillbillies discussing the floods that just happened in eastern Kentucky. Okay, so I know it may not seem like it in between my jaunts in between New York and Los Angeles. I do sometimes notice what's going on in the rest of the country, and to that end, I would like to welcome on T&T of the T-Billies. That's right. It's Terence and Tom from the Trillbillies to talk about the devastating floods that have just happened in their neck of the woods, eastern Kentucky. So, Terence, you wrote about it in The Baffler. Tom, I read an interview with you by Sarah Miller about just like, your experience of the flood and just the history of eastern Kentucky. So, just to begin, guys, could you just share with me and our listeners what your experience of you and your loved ones? What was your experience of the flood and its aftermath like?
Man, it was gnarly, dude. All the phone lines were down, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. Like I usually just when I get up in the morning, I call everybody, back home, and nobody was answering. Nothing was going on. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it's a little weird. And then I get a call from the Parkway Inn Motel, which is our hotel in Whitesburg, which ain't the Ivy Leagues if you ever want to stay in Whitesburg.
Most people, yeah, if you live in New York City, you go to brunch at A59, I don't know, some nice brunch spot. That's where me and Tom used to have to go to brunch on Sunday mornings with the church crowd. To eat soggy biscuits and powder eggs.
So my sister calls me and she's rattled, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And she's like all of Whitesburg is underwater. I was waiting at the house, her and my nephew, to be rescued. And she's like, eventually it got so high, almost up to their roof that we had to take our chances with the flood water. So they just jump in the fucking flood water, her and my nephew, and their dog. My nephew's got the dog underneath his arm. And then they float downstream, and she says it's not like being in flood water. It's not like being in a lake or even a river or a swimming pool. It's it just takes you wherever the fuck it wants to,
And there's a ton of other shit in the water too,
and diseases,
cars and diseases and all kinds of
Gasoline.
Yeah. So my nephew, before she goes under this bridge, at the end of their holler, my nephew grabs her and pulls her up the hill, and they walk up the mountain and over the other side, which is an old railroad tracks, but it's all overgrown now. It's not in use anymore. And they have to walk down Kentucky 15 to the Parkway Inn, where they called me from a landline because all the cell phone lines were down. So the rest of the day, I'm just getting calls from buddies that I've not seen in a long time that don't live there anymore. Man, do you know, can you get a hold of anybody? My buddy Wes called, and he couldn't find his wife or kid for hours. And then eventually they ended up being fine. But So there was all that kind of stuff in the immediate. And then after the fact, like a lot of people, I mean, including my mom, my sister, and my aunt, all lost everything. And it was wild. I don't know. It was, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around it, because a flood is, tornadoes, earthquakes, those things, you don't really think of floods in that calculus of like varied, you see them on the news from time to time, but like it's, I got a new appreciation.
Read your Bible, Tom. Floods are no joke.
It's actually the OG.
Yeah, the Old Testament. Terrence, in your Baffler piece, you have there's a stunning thing you describe about seeing like a building structure that's just like perfectly preserved, like on top, like just has been moved, like and perfectly preserved, just placed on like the precipice of like a bridge or something, and then you realize like you were trying to figure out, did the water suck it under the bridge, or did the waters just get so high that it went like over the top of the bridge?
Yeah, it was hard for us to wrap our minds around because, as I pointed out, this housing structure, it had been upstream from this bridge, and it was like a mental block you have in your mind. Like, how did it get from point A to point B? It just made no sense. And I think it's like with floods, especially with this kind of flood. I mean, you think of, I guess, I don't know. I've never been in a serious flood before, especially not one in a city or in the countryside. But in this case, you had decades of strip mining. And I mean, we'll talk more about it in a second. But just to paint you a picture, in this case, you had decades of industrial activity that created this situation where the water was running through communities. Like I said in the piece, like stampedes of bulls. Like, this isn't just rain accumulating in low-lying spots and then slowly rising, and then like you're like, oh shit, well, I guess the water's getting higher. No, this was like that scene in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where
yes,
yeah,
it's like wall of water, just like the deluge just pouring towards you.
Yeah. And you've got, I mean, the dispersal of debris is what's so astonishing, and not just debris, but also people. Like they actually 2 days ago had to raise the death toll again. Like, they were still finding people that had been carried, we're talking miles. Like, this one woman came into our mutual aid office and was telling us, she's like, yeah, I lost my car. She was like, I know that sounds maybe like cliche in a flood, but like, how do you lose a car? Like, eventually you would imagine someone would find it. No one's found it 2 weeks later. Who the fuck knows? It's just we're
disappeared. It's just been it's just been erased by nature. But yeah, like you alluded to it, and I was wondering, like, could you talk a little bit about how they like sort of unique geography and history of Eastern Kentucky make it so uniquely vulnerable to like how devastating this flood was that like otherwise would have been bad, but not nearly as devastating as what we're seeing now?
So, I mean, surface mining is just about what it sounds like. Here, you've got a mountain, and it's got coal seams in it. And in a mountain, there's several coal seams. Once upon a time, you would go to the bottom of that mountain, you'd face it up, you'd send the coal miners in, they'd bring the coal out. But as the industry became more mechanized, and especially as it started to sort of enter its end game after all the easy to reach coal seams had been mined out, they started this new practice called mountaintop removal, which was a sort of even more developed form of just surface mining. And so you cut the top of the mountain off. I mean, you just dynamite it and then drag line it over into the streams. And then that way you can just literally lift the coal seams out of the earth that way. That creates flooding hazards in two ways. First of all, you've put in all that debris into the streams. The second way is that you've compacted the soil on top of the mountain so that none of it gets absorbed into a mountain. Like, these hills around here are mostly porous, and there's also vegetation, and the water can get absorbed. I read this one article that said 70% of the rainwater went directly into the streams, which is apparently pretty astonishing. Like,
we're talking like 11 inches in 12 hours.
Yeah, even more than that. In some cases, up to 16 or 17 inches. I mean, some of these houses I've been into, you look at the flood line, the water line in their house, and it's taller than you are.
Yeah, and 16 or 17 inches, like that's like if it was just flat or whatever. But 16 or 17 inches when it's now channeled into these very narrow creeks and valleys becomes like an astonishing amount of water in a really like frightening amount of time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and so the floods, it happened about 2 weeks ago. But what is like the state? What are the conditions in eastern Kentucky and the flooded areas right now?
So a lot of those areas, obviously, the water drained out. The water drained out within about 3 days, and there was a few dicey moments because it felt like it was going to start raining again at any moment, and it did start raining, and so there was a little bit of flooding again here and there, and obviously, everything has come in waves. Every single day is different. I mean, anybody who's like lived through a disaster like this, they're probably listening to this and like being, saying like, baby's first disaster or whatever. But
get your weight up, boys.
But it is my first disaster. I didn't know what to expect about anything like this. So like every day really is different. So like at first there was the National Guard. And you'd see those trucks everywhere. FEMA hadn't arrived yet. Nobody from the federal government. And we were just running supplies to people out of our own money and money that people could get to us. And then it sort of caught up about a week later. Then you had like an inundation of like crisis workers, like church groups, nonprofit people, and supplies. And then about a week after that, and at some point in the middle of all that, FEMA arrived, but you couldn't tell because, as I explained to Tom, like, when I was thinking of FEMA, I thought like, oh, like they'll have like cute, fancy uniforms, like I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. It's like, but no, they wear like polos and like boat shoes. They look like a CIA, They look kind of like that CIA agent in one of those James Bond movies. He's like supposed to be like the cool American with a Hawaiian shirt and like a
played by
like
Joe Don Baker in Goldeneye.
That's the exact one I'm thinking of. They look like Joe Don Baker.
What are you doing here, Wade?
Banyan trees. I am not here. The CIA has no knowledge, no involvement.
But Terrence, the title of your piece is "Flooding in the Sacrifice Zone," and I guess it makes a point of Eastern Kentucky. The conditions in Eastern Kentucky have been this is a sacrifice zone. Like this is a place that like capitalism has taken untold wealth out of, but like there is virtually no infrastructure that could contain something like this, and the effects of the flood were greatly magnified by the extraction of coal and mountaintop removal, like you were saying. So, I mean, like how do you see this disaster as sort of New York has flooded a bunch of times, but like as a preview of things to come as climate change worsens and as like capitalism concentrates itself even further and just abandons larger and larger parts of this country to like these sacrifice zones of people and just like a forgotten about place.
I mean, Tom, I don't know if you want to add anything here, but I mean, I'll say that the inland southeast where we live is already mostly almost a rainforest. I mean, it gets something like 60 to 70 inches of rain a year. And like by comparison, I'm originally from New Mexico, where we get about 6 or 7 inches of rain a year. I mean, we get a lot of rain here. And they're saying, and people were saying this for years. Tom sent me an article just about a week ago where we were talking about this, but people have been saying for years that Eastern Kentucky and Central Appalachia, this place where you've got this very specific mixture of circumstances, the legacy coal mining, but also increased rain events from climate change, from a warming world, are going to create this situation where these disasters are more common. So, I mean, like they called this like a 1 in 1,000 year flood, but I would assume over time that's going to be cut down to 1 in 10 years.
Well, yeah, it's accelerating at just kind of a crazy clip because the article that Terrence was talking about is the study that the Army Corps of Engineers did with Duke University, and they looked at the river basins and all their tributaries in Central Appalachia where there's been a lot of strip mining going on, and they had projected that, and they showed like the river basins that were like the most affected, and the three that were most affected were the Lower Cumberland, the Big Sandy, and the Kentucky, which the headwaters of all three of those start in our town, and those were the most affected. And they projected that by the year 2070, that basically there would be this 35% increase in like the stream levels and stuff because of the destruction from the coal mining and everything, added with a coming monsoon season for much of the Southeast. So you got this like thing that's ripe for disaster. Well, they're already at 35% in 2022. They projected that by 2070. So they're about 50 years early on their projections. And this, I think they ended that in 2015, the study.
I was just going to say, if you're a poor working person in one of these communities, you most likely live in a cheap trailer home in a floodplain. I mean, we've created virtual just traps. I mean, like it's a death trap for a lot of people. And it probably varies from place to place, whether you're in like Ohio or out west versus here. But here, a lot of the infrastructure is completely worn down and devastated by the coal industry. And that's what's kind of ironic about the whole idea of rebuilding. Like, for years, for about 10 or 15 years, the sort of professional class here has been involved in this long-term project called, the just transition away from coal. And the whole insinuation was that we were rebuilding from the devastation of the coal industry, but nobody could say that because, we would be insulting the coal bosses. And so it's just devastation compounded on top of devastation.
So the Democratic governor, Andy Bashir, Tom, you talked about something called the SOAR initiative, saving our Appalachian rivers or something. What was it?
Shaping our Appalachian region.
Yeah. Okay. Shaping our. Gotta shape. Yeah. Let's shape the region so it's a little less. Cut through with deep creeks and cleared mountaintops.
Yeah. Yeah, so the SOAR
that initiative is dead now, basically.
Well, yeah, the whole thing was predicated on like the idea of like we're going to give these, like it's everything we've ever heard about, sort of like giving microloans to poor people to start businesses and all that kind of stuff. But it's like a lot of people had been doing that for a while, right? As part of this whole calculus of like the just transition movement, they called it in Eastern Kentucky and other places that are poor and affected by like extractive industries and stuff. But it's like the reason it's dead is like, okay, if me and you have a restaurant wheel in this town that's become rapidly depopulated because all the jobs are going out, right? And a flood comes and like takes our building out. Like, that's almost like a mercy kill in a way, right? Because it's like now I get my insurance money and all this stuff, and I don't have to like live on these razor ass thin margins. I
don't have to set it on fire myself and hope I did a good job.
right. Yeah, we don't have to Goodfellas it. So, yeah, but the whole thing is a crock. And then it's like, I'd mentioned to Sarah in that thing that like, some of the things they had come up with were like Elizabeth Holmes Theranos-esque like horseshit, where like they wanted to take mine runoff water that was trapped in what they call slurry ponds. And these things, when they rupture, can be pretty destructive. They've wiped out towns and everything like that. One in Martin County, Kentucky was like, what was it, Terrence? Like 3 times the size of the Exxon Valdez oil spill when it ruptured and just buried the town and this like mine runoff shit. But this guy wanted to take all the coal slurry and use it to generate nuclear power as like a clean energy thing. And it's like,
how does that work?
Man, well, you'll hear like Japan does that, but they have like the whole Pacific to draw water from and whatnot. There was a lot of holes in it, but like it's that kind of stuff. It's all like scammy shit. And then the other thing is, like, they let all these recycled coal bosses get in on the ground floor of whatever the newest like thing is, whether it's solar or whatever it is. So you have all these old guys that were like coal diehards that are now like, oh, we're solar guys, but really all they've done is just retrofitted their outfits to like put up solar panels.
Well, we will still be using coal to run the solar panels.
right.
I know you guys have mentioned some of the mutual aid work you're doing, just like out of pocket on your own. But Terrence, a point you raise in your Baffler piece is sort of like the limits of charity when confronted with, like what is it, like a generational like environmental and economic problems that are now coming to the fore because of things like flooding and climate change. But just like you make the point that like people need socks or generators or whatever. But as soon as you start talking about, hey, how we just give them housing or like a new place to live, like the steel door just slams shut.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is an interesting issue with this that I've really been turning over in my mind a lot, which is that natural disasters, and again, that phrase I find to be very interesting that we call them natural disasters. But natural disasters do kind of create a contradiction, which is that by their very nature, by their very physical force, they can sort of challenge in a revolutionary way, an accelerationist way. It's not good, but they challenge the bounds of property. They turn private property and personal property into public property. All your shit goes into the
a lake, into a fucking swamp.
The lady's car.
Hey, the property line's by the poplar. Wait, where the fuck where'd the poplar go? It's still over there.
Right.
And this requires like intensive policing. And, and we talked about that a lot. We talked about it in the last couple of episodes of the show and in the Baffler piece. But I think people are finding this out more and more. And I think it's why it's becoming a huge flashpoint in both urban and rural politics. Like the example I mentioned in the piece was the Chapo Boudin recall in San Francisco. That like visible poverty and reforming policing and everything like that. This has become a huge flashpoint for like the reactionary liberal politic, and I think that it's tied in here because like they can't give people free housing. That's not what they do, and so it has to be policed. And obviously, the reactionaries have their own way of doing it, but the liberals can't just come out and say that. Which creates this very bizarre kind of like disjointed, like farcical thing, where you see all these Democratic politicians like Bashir and our own state representative Angie Hatton running around with our congressional representative Hal Rogers, where they all like are sort of making gestures to rebuilding. But the one thing that nobody can say is that the way to do it would be to put people in free, efficient housing outside of floodplains, in a safe way where they don't have to leave the region and where they can be provided for. But again, nobody's gonna. They can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like this sort of the reaction to the local police response, which is just like, oh boy, I wish a motherfucker would try to loot something. I can't wait. Can't wait to round up these looters. And it's just like, from what you describe, it doesn't really sound like there's anything to loot.
No,
it's all under what? It's all under like oil drenched water. Like it's all,
yeah. They act like there's this robust market for like waterlogged fucking shit from somebody's garage or something, and we got to put a stop to that. It's fucking ridiculous.
It is a weird.
I looted a PlayStation 5 that I took out of someone's engine block that has been floating in front of my house.
Yeah.
It makes no sense because like some of the like there's like a genealogy of certain like looting myths, because like one that I kept hearing was like, oh, people are flipping copper, they're like out here scrapping copper and they're selling it, and it's like, to who? They would have to fucking they'd have to everybody's
drive to Lexington to fucking sell it or paddle boat it.
It's like the thing is like this storm was so catastrophic that everybody was affected and fucked up by it. Everybody. Like, nobody was enterprising enough with it. Like, who the fuck is just, like, sitting around, like, waiting for, like, yeah, like, as soon as the flood hits, like, all right, now I'm going to go steal a catalytic converter. Like, no one is that. Like, I'm sure it happened, but it's just the fact that the cops were saying this before the floodwaters had even receded just shows you that they are the ones spreading the rumors.
And I guess, yeah, like that's the reactionary response, like you said, like from the Democratic state leadership or politicians. It's like a sort of half-assed FEMA response, but also like I would imagine, I don't know, like tax credits for people who stay in a floodplain in like some ramshackle fucking house, or like open a business in a formerly flood-devastated community that no one lives in anymore.
Right.
It is weird. Like FEMA itself is a very strange organization. Like me and Tom have joked multiple times that it is almost like a practical joke in some ways. It seems designed to waste your time, which, and I don't know. Maybe somebody would get angry at me saying that. I don't know. Maybe it runs efficiently, but all of my interactions with it have disabuse me of the notion that it exists to help people in any meaningful way after a disaster.
Well, the idea, like the conspiracy theory about FEMA is that they're like it's like a federal infrastructure that's just like when the order is given, they're just going to round everyone up and efficiently put them into camps. But it's just like do like your interaction with this organization, do they seem that prepared to do that?
As I said, you're not going to go to a camp if a guy with a Ralph Lauren polo and boat shoes shows up at your house. It's like
Well,
a
but
PPK.
it was also funny because weren't you telling me like they're like not even going to people that are like trapped in these hollers and stuff. They're like putting up these mobile stations that are like not reliably located or anything like that.
Yeah, that is the thing. That's the funny thing about the FEMA conspiracy theory, because it's like what I've seen of them, they won't get off their asses to go anywhere.
They're not rounding anybody up.
They're not rounding any up because they're not even going to people's houses to check on them until
this is a situation when you would want them to round some people up.
right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Get them out of the holler that they're stuck in. Because, like you said, like road, like all the roads, like there's sometimes like the only access to these communities in like rural parts of Kentucky have been completely washed away. So they are now completely isolated and cut off from any infrastructure of even like, can I even get out of this area that I'm now trapped in?
I have a friend. He's blind. He lives up a holler, and he's still cut off because his bridge broke. And they have to, and his dog was sick, and they had to take it to the vet. And so they literally had to put his dog on a raft and like ferry the dog over to the other side and take him to the vet. I mean, like, yes, that's just to illustrate that a lot of these places are still cut off. And actually, I have a funny FEMA anecdote before we move on. FEMA is set up in our town. They set up like a mobile, I guess like you could call it a hotspot. Like it's like a Wi-Fi network or whatever. But the funny thing about it is that it's password protected.
Oh my God, you just lost everything. You're trying to contact your relatives and they're like, okay, X, capital J, lowercase W, K, 1, ampersand.
Yeah.
Like,
I like the idea of going to your local like city council meeting and like the only reason that you're there is like, yo, can I get the Wi-Fi password? All right, thanks.
Yeah.
But so you've been doing some community aid work. Could you describe a little bit about like the people you've talked to, like what they're feeling right now, their anger, their fear, and just like what kind of stuff people need right now in Eastern Kentucky?
Yeah. So the main thing is that people need money. And there's a lot of supplies. There's a lot of distribution centers with a lot of supplies. The politics around that has sort of started to become interesting as people are now accusing like drug users of, taking advantage of the distribution centers. I don't know. It's so fascinating to me, again, how like class hierarchies get kind of reinforced during all this. Anyways, there are people that need supplies, but they can mostly get them from the distribution centers. What they mostly need is money. And so we've got like mutual aid funds set up like that. And I'm sure, I can send you guys the link and we'll put them in the show description. But we also need volunteers, because what I've started doing in the last couple weeks is like mucking out people's houses. And I really cannot describe how awful this is. I mean, a lot of the material that's been left in people's home. First of all, if you live in a trailer home, it's basically completely, as Tom was mentioning earlier, trailer homes, once they get any amount of damage, I mean, they're
in my mom's and sisters and aunt's house, like the walls are already starting to bow. You know what I mean? It's just not even safe to be in there, like getting stuff. Like you need to get the shit and get out.
The material is made that trailer homes are made with. It's abysmal. It's appalling that we would force anyone to live in a situation like that in this country. But we've been, to the extent that anything is salvageable in those homes, we've been trying to get them out and help those people. But the thing is, the protocol with a lot of this is like you have to go in, you have to shovel out all of this muck that is mostly chemicals like oil, gasoline, fecal, like shit, actual shit from like septic tanks, mud. Just the smells that like.
Oh man,
it's astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. And so we need volunteers for people to help out with that too. And again, I send you guys the link. Like I know I'm not expecting people to come down from like British Columbia or whatever to volunteer, but like I don't know if anybody is listening in slightly outside the region and wants to come help, I'm sure we could find a way to do that. And that's the crazy thing about this. It is astonishing that I pointed this out in the early days of this, and then I felt bad because I was like, well, maybe I was too harsh on the National Guard and FEMA or whatever. But it's like, because you kind of you can talk yourself into that sometimes. Like, oh, maybe I'm being too ridiculous about this. But it is really astonishing that like a ragtag group of locals has to go and clean out people's homes and give them supplies and money. Like, it just continues to blow my mind. I don't know. I mean, I know all of the things we know about the neoliberal government and that it doesn't do anything or whatever, but it still is impossible for me to wrap my mind around the fact that, like me, someone who is not an expert in like gutting houses in any way, like that I would be tasked with helping people in something like this. It's really astonishing.
I mean, like, Terrence, like you have a couple of points in your article where you say, like, you just got to laugh, like when you're confronted with the magnitude of these kind of problems. But Tom, in your interview, you mentioned that your mom was in the hospital when the flooding occurred.
Yeah, so my mom doesn't even know yet. My mom's
that's what I wanted to bring up, because you said like she was, because of her condition, and she'd want to turn on the TV, and you'd be like, let's just stay away from the news channel. You don't have to worry about the fact that your house is gone now.
Yeah, I'd be sitting there with her. She goes, God, I can't wait to get out of here and go home and sleep in my own bed. And I was like, yeah, about that. So, no, it is kind of funny in a dark way, but yeah, it's I don't know, man. There's just no absolutes in human misery, I would say. So I mean, might as well laugh about it.
Yeah,
about it a little bit.
Absolutely. And I guess like in terms of like a vision of things to come for the rest of the country, and particularly in areas of the country where like capital is highly concentrated in very wealthy parts of the country. I mean, I asked you guys to come on a couple days ago after I read your Baffler piece, Terrence, but like almost the day after that, I'm staying in LA right now. I read about something called the atmospheric river that has the potential to be the greatest natural disaster in human history. And I always thought an earthquake was going to be the thing that takes out LA, but apparently no. Like, and people have known about this for a while. There is the potential for basically the entire valley to flood at once, and it is just a giant concrete bowl that will not drain, and it could happen like pretty much instantly, and it's like could happen very soon. And I mean, like that would lead to the displacement of millions of people overnight.
Yeah.
What I've seen is that, and I guess this is kind of where like the gallows humor comes into play. What I've seen is that no one cares. No one gives a shit. Like, that would happen, and the Democrats would still probably be talking about rebuilding. We're going to rebuild. There's like 4 million dead and like 200 million displaced. We're going to rebuild.
It's insane. I mean, like, it's like you said, Will. It's like we know it's not a matter of if, but when there's going to be a massive earthquake that like shelves like most of the Pacific Northwest off into the ocean, right? Like, geologists have known this for years, and it's like, it could happen today or it could happen in 100 years, but like they know it's imminent. And it's crazy that we kind of get stuck in this, like, just thinking that, like, oh, well, that can never happen. I guess it's the same mechanism that helps us deal with, like, the fact we know we're going to die, right? Like, if it feels like it's far enough down the road, we can just kind of kick the can a little bit. But that shit would scare me now, reading that kind of stuff.
I just think that, like, in a healthy society, one that's not built around the profit motive, we would have values that would want us to protect the environment, want to live in an ecosystem that is not trying to kill us at all times. And if it is, to use science and technology available to us to protect ourselves and to live efficient, happy lives, to where when we do go out, we're comforted and everything. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, not to defend the profit motive or anything on Chapo Trap House, but you think it's like almost suicidal in the way, because like even if you like take for granted like the long term viability of like the economic growth and the profit motive, you think like huge chunks of like urban centers and like large swaths of this country just being like fucking devastated, obliterated by natural disasters, and that having like no one prepare for it or do anything after it happens would seem to be somewhat antithetical to everybody continuing to make fucking money.
Well, here's
Or
what
maybe
I
not.
found.
I mean, maybe that's the scary part. I mean, maybe
No,
it's
no.
actually.
No, you're absolutely right. Here's what I found. Natural disasters, or again, whatever you want to call that, they are immensely profitable. And again, I know, obviously, like Naomi Klein has pointed this out, there is the whole thing about disaster capitalism. But like the sort of minutia of disaster capitalism is what is blowing my mind. The fact that like I can sit and like, you can stare at a mountain of Colgate toothbrush. Like you have to imagine every time there's one of these things, they sit in their boardrooms at like Johnson and Johnson and like everything. They like looking at like the fucking line go up every time there's like stuff like this happens.
Terrence been catching those Tide loads of hope all over him.
I mean, it's immensely profitable for not everyone, but for probably certain segments of the capitalist class and industries. And I mean, I don't know if there will ever come a point where it's not profitable for enough of them to where they can then leverage that into some, I don't know, reform. I have no idea. But right now, it's too profitable, I think, for certain segments of capital to not want to fuck with it.
All right. Well, I think we should leave it there for today. Terrence and Tom, the Trillbillies, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Just, sending love from the Chapo Trap House family. I'm glad everyone is safe at the moment. But we will include those links for, community aid and resources for anyone who wants to volunteer or donate. So, thanks for all you're doing there. Stay safe. And just sending love to you guys and all of Eastern Kentucky right now.
Thanks boys.
Appreciate
we
ya.
appreciate it.
All right. Cheers, guys.